Okay, we're recording this, by the way, so if somebody misses it, like her parents, we'll send it. Okay. Our speaker tonight understands the toll of the modern grid better than most. After a decade practicing law in the fast-paced environment of New York City, Melissa Feig found herself facing the reality of burnout and chronic inflammation. Her search for answers took her across the Southeast Asia and South America, where she had immersed herself in global healing traditions. Today, she is a clinical herbalism student at the Florida School of Holistic Living, focusing on nervous system restoration and root cause healing. She's here to share her personal journey and show us how simple, everyday choices with food and herbs can be our most powerful tools for rebuilding vitality. Please join me in welcoming Melissa Feig.
Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Melissa Feig, and I am a clinical herbalism student at the Florida School of Holistic Living. Primarily what I'm focusing on now, as Lori mentioned, is nervous system restoration and root cause healing. And I'm excited to say that I'm launching my line of formulations in 2 weeks at the Florida Herbalism Conference in Orlando. Wow, nice. So I have some samples actually that I'd love for you guys to try that I brought, and we'll pass them around so that you can taste them while I'm speaking. They're glycerites, and you may not have heard of glycerites, but you might have heard of an herbal tincture. Tinctures are alcohol-based herbal medicine. And because I don't drink alcohol, which I will talk to you about, I wanted to create a line of alcohol-free products. They're also vegan and gluten-free. I'll talk a little bit more about them later. I want to get into what we're here to talk about. So a really good place for a formulator to start is with, I guess, an early formulation story. So early humans started out on this planet feeling sick and going to plants. There wasn't a pill. And they would generally go to someone in their family or their community that was an elder, someone who knew the plants in their community, and would go out and they would go find plants that would solve the problem that this person was facing. They would create some sort of soup or a tea or other early remedy, and then they would nurture this person back to health. Part of the care journey is the care that you put into yourself, the time that you put into yourself, and the nurturing. So one of these early pain medicines that we know of came from a plant called meadowsweet. We also have one called willow bark. And if you have any kind of medical background, you may have heard of these plants before. They grow in wetlands and bogs, areas not so hot as Florida, a little more temperament. But they generally have been used for hundreds of years for pain relief, for cramps, and And so what the compound in them is called salicylic acid. Yeah. So in 1800s, scientists wanted to understand why these compounds were great for pain relief, but they didn't know what was causing it. So what they did was they isolated salicylic acid in plants like willow bark. And they started using this to treat people. What they found was that these compounds did work in isolation. They were great at targeting the issue that they were presenting, the specific issue. But the issue that they were facing, the problem that it came with, was that there were no longer any buffering compounds, right? So what happened was, people who were taking a salicylic isolate ended up having things like internal bleeding or severe irritation of the stomach. Scientists in the 1800s reformulated this into what we now have as aspirin. So this now shows us that we have two approaches to healthcare here. Neither one is wrong, and they actually complement each other very well. Western medicine sees a problem in isolation and finds the most effective, rapid solution to target that. When we have an acute problem, Western medicine is a fantastic solution for our health. If I have a broken bone, I'm going to see a doctor. If I have cancer, I'm probably going to go have that tumor removed by a doctor. On the other hand, you have people who study plants and other other naturopathic forms of medicine. And we look at the body as a system, not in isolation. So you have herbalists who take plants and work with them, all of the compounds together, the buffering compounds along with the compounds that we're using to target a specific issue. And we look at the body in the same way. If you come to an herbalist and you say, I have repeat headaches, we're not going to give you aspirin or willow bark. we're gonna wanna understand your life story. We're gonna wanna understand what's happening in your kidneys, in your endocrine system, in your nervous system, in your brain, and find out what is the source of the pain, right? What's actually causing this? So these two systems complement each other and work together. And what I'm here to tell you is that herbalism, or naturopathy, is something that you can implement in your day-to-day life in small ways to address pain that you may face. It's inevitable. But what it allows us to do is feel that we have more control in taking the pain that we have and preventing it from becoming a crisis that requires medical intervention. So I really learned this lesson the hard way through my own body. And I want to tell you a little bit about my story. As Lori mentioned, I was a lawyer in New York for 10 years. I was a litigator in Manhattan. It was a high power, high struggle, high stress career, and it works for many people. And unfortunately, it was not working for me. I wasn't really listening to the signs though. So it started early as things like indigestion, insomnia, headaches, and then things that were supposed to be very cyclical that were happening in my body, my circadian rhythm, my sleep, started coming off just slightly. And then I was seeing a doctor because I had acid reflux. And then the next thing I know, I can't get out of bed for a few weeks. And all of this is happening over a period of 10 years. And my mental health is suffering as a result. I'm seeing my skin condition is suffering as a result, because as we start to study this, we learn that skin is really a flag for the body. The body's saying, hey, there's something we need to think about. That's what acne or other skin conditions really are. They're showing us inflammation. So ultimately, I had a period of time where I was working about 100 hours a week on a case. I was going to trial. And after trial, I melted down. I could not get out of bed, truly couldn't move. I gained 20% of my body weight over a period of a few months. And then one night, I sat up at about 3 o'clock in the morning and I vomited, just projectile vomited. And I was terrified. I felt stabbing pain. I thought I was dying. And I rushed to the hospital and crawled into the ER. I was in New York. I crawled into the ER and vomited on the floor. They rushed me into the back. As it turns out, I had a kidney infection, acute kidney infection, kidney stones, and severe case of hypothyroid. The doctors kept me overnight and told me that I would be on medication for the rest of my life. I didn't like that. And I didn't accept that. And it's unfortunate my parents aren't here, because this is when my mom would shake her head and be like, she's the most stubborn person I've ever met. Yeah. So really, there was no single fix, and no doctor that I was meeting with was giving me the information that I was looking for. And so, like the stubborn woman my parents raised me to be, I set out to figure it out myself. And what I learned was that there really isn't one single fix when you have a system overload issue. Hypothyroid is a signal of inflammation, systemic inflammation in the body. So I had to look at my nervous system, my endocrine system, my reproductive system. I had to look at everything and bring everything slowly back into stasis. And that's how I used naturopathy. And what rebuilt me was not one intervention. It was the little things, the little decisions that I made day to day, primarily with food that we'll talk about, that shifted my health in such a way that this all happened that I ended up leaving my job in the end of 2022. In early 2024, I flew to India to meet with one of the premier Ayurvedic doctors in the world. I had WhatsApped his assistant every day for 3 months. Yeah. He took me on Christmas Eve. And the next day he came in and he took my pulse and he looked at my tongue, and I had gone for hypothyroid. One of his residents comes back into the room and she says to me, we have to go get blood work for you, which is not customary. Usually they can give you a full protocol by looking at your tongue. As it turns out, and he picked up on it from looking at my tongue, I had cured my hypothyroid before I even got to India to do this program. I ended up staying to do the full protocol, but I want to share with you some of the things that I did to allow my body to start to heal itself. So I created those conditions through everyday choices. And I started to look at my health as a table. And we have all these pillars of health. Look at that, think about them as legs of the table. So if one of them is food, can we think of something else that we do day to day, or a decision that we make day to day that impacts our health.
Sleep.
Sleep is incredibly important.
Exercise.
Absolutely. Movement is incredibly important as well.
Hydration.
Hydration, absolutely. Food, for sure. Food is really important. There are two others that I really want to mention that I think we kind of tend to overlook because they're not so obvious. One, which is super obvious to me, and I hope becomes obvious from my speech, is stress. Yeah? We were not designed for 365 active labor. That is not how humans were designed. Early humans, they honored the sun, they honored the seasons, and so they were not working 365 days a year the way that we are now. So we have to look at our nervous system and make sure we're not overloading ourselves with stress. Modern studies show that stress is linked to every single severe or death-causing disease that we are plagued with. So if you have high levels of stress over a series of years, your body is not able to fight or repair itself the way that it can without that stress. We're not meant to be in a sustained state of fight or flight. We've probably all heard those terms. And the other one that I think is really important to mention is connection. Yeah? So there's multiple different types of connection. I'm just gonna move this out. There's multiple different types of connection that I think are really important. My favorite is connection with each other. Humans are biologically hardwired for connection. There are studies that have proven that there's a term actually called widowhood. In later life, spouses, when they lose a spouse, have a significantly, we're talking 20, 30% or more, higher likelihood of survival if they have community, meaningful community and connection when they lose their spouse. We are biologically hardwired for connection to each other. We need it. It's a necessity. Loneliness is a killer. The other thing is our connection to our own bodies, right? Listening. We're talking about pain as a signal that the body is sending, inflammation as a signal. So asking our bodies what's happening, understanding our bodies more helps us feel more empowered. And the third one is connection to the planet. So herbalism, food, and as you talked about, sunlight, right? We really have to be connected to the planet. So I think all of these form a basic table, right, with structure. And if any one of these becomes wobbly, then you're gonna have a vulnerability in your health, or your health is gonna have some sort of struggle there. So we wanna try and look at all of these. But now that we've set the table, right, we have all these structures in place, we can talk about food and herbs. So I look at food as one of these pillars of health. And food is incredible, right? Food is energy, but it's not just energy. Food is information. It's a signal that we send to our body every time we interact with it. And that statement, that knowledge, when I started realizing and thinking about food and what I was eating in that way, that actually shifted the way that I started eating. It really did. It wasn't what diet am I applying, it was what message am I sending to my body right now. I'll pause and just make a point here. I think, and we talked about this really, perfectionism is a killer. I like to apply like an 80-20 rule for myself, discipline 80% of the time, 20% of the time I try to enjoy myself. I have a few hard rules, generally speaking, but for the most part, enjoy your food, right? Like life is meant to be enjoyed. So if food is signals, there are many different types of signals that food can send. And I want to give a few examples of ways that signals that we can use food to maybe send the wrong signals to our body, and that we can adjust those in small ways. So one of the signals that we can send is stability versus chaos, right? I'm talking, and I'll go more into it, about blood sugar as an example here. So every time we eat sugar, our body sends out stress hormones. So our body is biologically wired to respond to sugar, but it's not biologically wired to respond to the amount of sugar that we eat. So for context, sugar was first discovered around 1650. It first started entering our diet around the 1650s. And the average human was eating about 4 pounds a year of sugar. By 1850, sugar was broadly popularized. It was at about 20 pounds a year. Can anyone guess now, on average, how much sugar a person eats per year?
200 pounds?
It's between 150 and 200 pounds of sugar a year. We are not biologically hardwired for that amount of stress hormones being sent to our body, right? But it is true, and it's just part of how our diet has evolved over time. Another signal that, so taking it back a second, back to sugar. That was the major shift that I made to support my thyroid. I cut sugar from my diet completely. And I'm not suggesting that every person needs to do this part-time or full-time, but if you are having an acute issue in the body, inflammation in the body, removing the extra burden your body has to take on by processing sugar is a great place to start. Great place to start. That was the life-changing decision that I made for my thyroid. There were two ways that I supported it. One was removal and one was supplementation. I'll talk about supplementation more, but getting rid of the sugar was fundamentally life-changing. And now, have you ever had like a candy or a kid's treat and it tastes kind of chemically or different to you now than it did before, or something that kids tastes so sweet, tastes odd? When you don't have sugar for a while, or that chemical, your body starts to register it differently. So now, if I were to eat a Hershey's bar, it tastes different. So I guess I say this to give you a little bit of hope that if you do start to cut sugar from your diet, it is kind of an addiction, and after a while it does taper off. Your taste will change. Another signal that food can send is stress or inflammation or repair. And Laura, you touched on this before, but in terms of processed foods, right, and microplastics. So I do want to touch on that. Processed foods add to inflammation load in the body, versus when we eat whole foods, they actually help our body process that inflammation load. So we're actually healing our body by eating whole foods. Whole foods, I mean, outside aisles of the grocery store, or basically what you can pronounce. We all know what they are, but it's kind of hard to eat whole food all the time, right? So what I try to do is, again, 80-20, but if I am buying a product that is processed, because inevitably even I do, we all do, I won't speak for all of us, I do, I try to look for certain ingredients. I try to look for products that have ingredients that I recognize. And here's a good example of why. Does anyone know, has anyone heard of Yellow 5? Yellow 5 is a coloring agent that's used in Gatorade, it's used in kids' candy. I'm sorry?
It's dye.
Yeah, it's actually, original Yellow 5 was created from what is left over after you burn coal. It is coal sludge. And they put it in kids' foods because it makes it a bright yellow color. So that's what Yellow 5 is. It's actually illegal in Asia, where I was living in Southeast Asia. So I didn't have to worry again about, it's hard in the US, right? I didn't have to worry about these sort of processed ingredients. That one, some of you may have heard of Yellow 5. That's something that people have been talking about a bit. Another example is citric acid. If you've looked at a bottle of anything, you've seen the word citric acid. So what we're learning now is that citric acid originally comes from citrus, right? But 90% of the citric acid that's in our products now is genetically modified citric acid. In fact, it doesn't even come from citrus. It's made from mold, fermented mold process. Black mold. It's not the same black mold that is in your house that will make you sick. It's not. But what we're talking about here is we have a system in place that is not getting political, not doing the best job of protecting us in our food, in what we eat, right? So we have to learn, we have to understand, and the best way to do that is to try and stick to what we know. Because if I see a bottle with natural ingredients on it, I consider myself pretty knowledgeable in this area. I don't know what natural flavors are. If I see citric acid, I'm assuming it's some lemon, you know? I'm not thinking there's mold flakes in my food. It's not mold flakes. But the point is, people who have mold intolerances can't eat products with citric acid. Okay, maybe so it's safe in small doses, but if someone who can't go near mold, can't touch this, it's probably something that I'm gonna avoid. So just things to think about in terms of inflammation versus repair when we're adding things to the body. That's why I try to encourage whole unprocessed foods. And the last one I would mention would be nourishment versus depletion. And what I'm talking about is our soil. So if you've ever heard the saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, that is no longer the case anymore. My herbalism teachers estimate it at 10 to 15 apples a day to keep the doctor away. Yeah, our soil is depleted. Yeah, so it's not just about eating whole foods, it's about eating a variety of whole foods. The really encouraging thing about this is that there are a lot of foods that are not super popularized, vegetables and fruits that are pretty easy to grow. We don't grow them here at Mirasol, but you can find local, I don't know, do we have a farmer's, do we have a garden?
Suzanne has a garden.
Excellent, my kind of girl, I have a garden too. We can learn about alternative food sources and start to buffer our nutrition by diversifying. So those are kind of general food rules. Limiting the sugar, the diversity in the diet, and the whole foods are an excellent place to start. I think oftentimes when we think about making changes for our health, we think about big changes. But really what I learned is that it's not about big changes, it's about the small inputs consistently over time. And the consistency not only heals your health, but it also shows you what you're able to do for yourself. You know, it's really that's a healing aspect of it as well. I also, by the way, found that my confidence increased significantly because I didn't feel so helpless and dependent on someone else to tell me how to heal my body. So those were some small things I did for food. A few other little tidbits that I picked up traveling that I really appreciate are eating warm. I don't know if you guys have heard this before. Traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda really keeps you eating room temperature or warm food and drink only. Yeah, it's because the metabolism is slowed down by cold, and raw is harder to extract nutrition from and to digest. So we'd rather see steamed vegetables than a salad. Yeah, it's another one to consider. Yeah, yeah. Can anyone think of anything else that they've heard, any kind of health trends that they're curious about? Yeah.
Should you drink warm or cold water?
I drink warm or room temperature water. Yeah. Everything is room temperature or warm. It's kind of a weird shift, but I always had sensitive teeth, so I was very happy to not drink cold stuff. So once I understood that food was a daily signaling, herbs started to make sense, right? Because herbs were signals that I was sending. The plants became signals that I was going to send to my body as well. And so I was able to start integrating them. And I thought about it again in two ways. Herbs are food, right? So I was thinking about elimination. How can I create an environment in my body that allows my body to focus on healing? And then I brought in herbs to support that healing process. Herbs are nourishment. They're actually the original medicine. Does anyone know any other medications that originally came from herbs? Digitalis, if you've heard of it, is made from a plant called foxglove. And you've all, I'm sure, heard of morphine.
Yeah.
Comes from poppies. I have a classmate who fell off her horse, and she's been, instead of taking morphine, she had huge surgery, her whole hip, leg reconstructed. She's been taking something like this, a tincture that has morphine. I'm sorry, not morphine, poppy. A poppy. So like I mentioned before, it's not about big interventions. Herbalism is going to be about small daily changes. And there are a couple ways that you can do that, and I think the easiest way is kitchen herbalism or herbalism at home. There's another thing that I just want to mention right now, another opportunity that I'll mention right now. My herbalism school, Florida School of Holistic Living, is starting our clinical program. We have 10, 20, 30 herbalists on staff that will be coming in, and think of it as our rotational, as if we were in medical school as our rotational. So we're going to be doing virtual appointments with people, and if you're interested in potentially signing up or applying to meet with an herbalist from my school, I can send around a clipboard. It'll be in the next few weeks to few months, and you can apply for an appointment. You can either take it or leave it, but then you at least have the information, the opportunity.
So there's one, you can pass one for each side. The clipboard, I'll take it on this side and they can pass over the other one.
Okay, I didn't write anything on the top of this one.
back.
Yeah, absolutely. We can pass them around, and I'll wait so you guys, everyone who wants to be involved in this program can. That's one way to do it, to work with an herbalist, and really how that will look, just to give you a heads up. Has anyone worked with an herbalist before?
I did.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
opened up a shop where I live and just started making all these tinctures, and I was blown away. I was having a problem focusing, and she gave me saffron, and it worked so well. I just put it under my tongue, and instead of being on, some kind of drug to focus.
Yeah.
So, but I feel like it's a movement where it's really coming back into popularity.
I like to think of herbalism as like the ancient lost knowledge, and no offense to you, of women, really. Like, this is our true knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this has been passed down from women to women for all of human history. But yes, I think it's really amazing. And saffron is also basically considered nature's antidepressant. I don't want to give you any claims. I can't make claims about how it works, but I've heard it called that. And there have been a lot of studies on the effectiveness at saffron at treating depression. And studies have shown that it has similar efficacy to an SSRI. So we're looking at small, consistent ways to support the body. And before it becomes a crisis. So again, herbalism becomes your complement, because if you do have a crisis, please don't call me, please go to the hospital. So what are ways that we can incorporate herbs? Yeah. I'm sure some of you are already incorporating herbs without even really knowing it. If you cook with rosemary, you're improving your circulation. If you drink ginger tea, you're improving your digestion. If you're bloating and you have some fennel, you'll debloat. So you might already be actively participating in this without even realizing it. And so I think it's more about expanding information and knowledge and playing. If you have a specific thing that you're concerned about or that you're working on, doing the research, and I'm not talking about on ChatGPT. I can suggest some initial books that are fantastic places to start that have fun recipes, or talking to an herbalist is a good place to start. But okay, so let's say we've picked out our herbs, let's say we've decided on, and I suggest picking a couple herbs that you're interested in. For me, I started with Tulsi, holy basil. I planted it right next to my basil. One is an adaptogen, one is a culinary plant, and they work beautifully together in soup or in a tea or anything. You can pick a couple herbs that you're interested in. Here are ways to use them in the kitchen. So, salt and pepper shakers, your grinders. Instead of pepper, I have sesame seeds and Nigella black sativa seeds in one. Fantastic combo for kidney, liver, and also for hair. And I just use that on top of everything. I have a dandelion root, just a dandelion plant. They grow wildflowers everywhere. In the morning, I go out to my balcony. I'm on Miami Beach in a tiny apartment. If I can do this, you can. And I snip a couple leaves off and I put them in my tea. If you're interested in just generally boosting your nutrition, something like nettle's a fantastic choice, stinging nettle. Really high nutrition content.
What is it?
Nettle. Nettle. You can get it dried, and you would use it as if you would use something like an oregano or a basil. It works like a culinary herb. So I have a glass jar on the counter in my kitchen next to my stove. And when I wake up in the morning and I'm making my eggs, scoop of nettle. I made matzo ball soup a couple nights ago. I had a scoop of nettle in there too. You know, the dandelion root went in there too. It becomes this like fun way to play. If you already love to cook, Herbalism adds this like extra layer of whimsy to the kitchen experience. Another great one, if you've ever heard of like milk teas or golds in milk, I'll do hemp puddings or chia seed puddings, and I'll add my herbs like rose hips or oat straw or other herbs into those as well. Immune boosting, we just are ending our immune compromising season, but I'll tell you, for next year, elderberry, you may have heard of elderberry. I make an elderberry syrup every year with vanilla that I carried back from a tiny island in Indonesia on my back. But elderberry is fantastic because even kids will take it because it tastes good. You can make it in honey. So more generally, stepping back, getting curious, gardening a little bit with it. But even if you don't want to go the getting your hands dirty route, bring it into your food, whether it's in dressings or honeys or baked goods. There are always ways that you can incorporate herbs into your nutrition, into your diet. Yeah. So again, daily small inputs, not dramatic interventions. So I guess this may be a good time to if you're interested, to let you guys try some glycerites. So I have two different glycerites here. One is just chamomile, which is kind of perfect for evening. Chamomile is traditionally used for gentle nervous system calming and sleep. And I made this formula for my dog. This is actually pet and infant safe at 6 months plus. So that it was inspired by my dog. That's why this is more of a simple formula. But this is chamomile and it's great for stress. My mom has been taking it. It's also antibacterial. So my mom had oral surgery. So she was using the drops on the wound to help heal that as well. So one is chamomile. Scary. The other is my first signature formula that I'm really proud of. I won't spend too much time talking to you about it, but it's adaptogenetic. It's designed to increase your stress tolerance. I call it capacity for life. Yeah, it was my post-burnout story in formula. This one has a small amount of rhodiola in it, which is generally considered to be a stimulant. We're at like 3%, but if you are sensitive, maybe avoid trying the capacity for life one or just taking a tiny drop.
What do you call it, please?
Sorry?
What do you call it?
Capacity for life. This is the other one.
Great name.
Thank you.
Yes.
Are you taking it directly or you're putting it
Yeah, great question. Great question. So glycerites are delicious. They taste like candy. You can put it right on your tongue, or you can put it diluted in a glass of water or tea. Generally, tinctures are diluted because they're alcohol and you're taking it on an empty stomach, but with a glycerate, you can take it however you want. So we can pass them around. I can get another.
How about if we use the glasses and put a little water in and put the drop in there? So
You can, or you can have someone, if you want to drop it on a spoon, that's a good idea.
are there spoons here? I don't think they have.
It doesn't matter too much.
Okay.
You can drop it in water or,
And how many drops?
so just to taste it, I wanted you to get the flavor for it. Generally speaking, if I'm giving this to you, you're gonna shake it. You're gonna squeeze it, get a full topper full, a dropper full, and you can take the whole thing on your tongue or in your water. The thing with herbals, you can really explore this on your own. For the most part, I'm not going to give you or encourage you to take any toxic herbs or herbs that have any kind of really intense effects on the body. These are very gentle. The formulas that I create or that most herbalists are going to be creating for you, unless you're dealing with an acute issue, you are going to not feel anything really. So my chamomile you might feel because it's designed to help you in that moment relax. The capacity for life is not designed to be felt. This is designed to help your body internally so that a month from now you wake up and you say, my husband snapped at me and I didn't care. Okay, dude, great. I have some if you want to purchase, but you guys, I have some here that I can sell to you. So it will be. So I will be launching my website, and I'll be selling at farmers markets. I hand make everything, so it's small batches. But I'll be doing that in the next 2 weeks. March 14th is the Herbalism conference, so that'll be my first market. But I happen to have this scheduled, so I brought the first batch for you guys to try. Yeah.
The other one you said, I'm sorry, was a bit of a stimulant or?
In Capacity for Life, there's about 3% of rhodiola. Rhodiola has a gentle but can be stimulating effect. So generally speaking, if you were purchasing this, I'd suggest taking it the full dropper full in the morning. If you were gonna taste it, if you wanted to taste it tonight so that you could taste the different herbs, because they do taste very different, just put a little drop on your finger, 1 or 2 or wherever, and you shouldn't have any problem with it. We can grab another bottle too.
Is there a chance of, my question is, because there's so much, like you're looking at it, I can take all these things, okay, and is there a time where you taking too much, or can it overlap, you can, some OD sort of thing, or how do you manage what to take? We could all use this, so I'm just, how do you manage it?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good question, right? Because now we're not just talking about how the herbs interact with each other, it's how do the herbs interact cumulatively with my supplements and also my medications. And that is something that you definitely, absolutely, 100% should be paying attention to. Something like a chamomile, if I'm talking specifically, is very mild. Most likely you're going to be fine. You do want to look into drug interactions when you start taking things that have complications with, for instance, blood thinners or SSRIs, and there are some herbs that do interact. For the most part, the herbs are generally not going to interact with medications, but there are some that will, so it is important to look into that. In terms of cumulatively the herbs building up and conflicting against each other, it's possible, but generally we're not working with the herbs that have really strong effects, and we are gonna wanna work with everything in a system. So if I was sitting down with someone, I'd say, what is everything that you're taking? Yeah, every single thing that you are taking. And then we'll work out a protocol. But if you want to play with it, you starting to take nettles or taking one of these, you should be, generally speaking, okay, unless you're on a specific medication that says, hey, don't take anything that conflicts with X, Y, and Z. It's specifically going to be, for the most part, in the area of blood thinners or SSRIs, but there are some other medications that counterindicate.
If you were to choose the top 3 formulas that you have, what would you, in top number 1, number 2, number 3, what do you recommend? Tough question.
It's tough because I formulate first for myself. So without getting too stuck in the glyceride stuff, this is an art form for me. It became my art. So I did this to heal myself and then really wanted to share that with other people. I became very passionate about sleep formulas because I think that when your sleep is suffering, everything else, it is impossible. Life is much, much harder when you're not sleeping. I'm really passionate about my Capacity formula because it's helped me restart in a really, really beautiful and fundamental way. And I love my chamomile because I made it for my baby, and who doesn't love something that's inspired for the other thing about the chamomile is I love that it has a broad range of applications. So if you're stressed out, you can take it. If you're feeling fried, but also if your mind is spiraling, or if you're just really tired or you're not sleeping.
How about something for your immune system? Is there something in particular that's the best formula that you have?
You don't need me for immune system. I don't want to sell you something you don't need. Garlic.
Garlic.
Seriously,
Raw.
Cut up a couple cloves of garlic, stick it in some honey, or just eat it, just chuck it back so you don't have to chew it. It doesn't have to be difficult. Elderberry is fantastic. Like I mentioned before, making an elderberry syrup is great. A lot of, like, if you make yourself, you know how they say chicken soup is healing? Because all the vegetables, the fennel, the carrots, the onions and the garlic, that's your herbs, right? Like, that's your healing medicine right there. So I think for immune system, my go-to, I will say, if you have some sort of really acute kind of flu-like thing, I like echinacea temporarily. That would be like that's a more strong medicine if you're really not feeling well. But generally for your immune system, yeah, garlic is great.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I suggest, if you guys are smoothie people or breakfast bowl people, I say get some nettles, dried nettle. Start there. Put it in your morning smoothie and see how you feel after a few weeks.
Where do you get it?
Yeah, that's a great question too. So I like a few different websites for organic herbs that I use as my supplier, and they also sell in smaller batches. My herbalism teacher runs Mountain Rose Herbs in Vermont. I also like Star West Botanicals out of San Francisco. I use their product, their
Say that one again.
Star West. Those are the two suppliers I use for my products, for my herbs. Star West Botanicals, it's one word, StarWest.
And how much of the herb would you put into a smoothie? Like 8 ounces?
So if I'm making tea, I generally like the rule of thumb of like 1 teaspoon of herb per cup of tea. I chuck it's folky, you know, you're playing in the kitchen. Like a tablespoon of my herb into my morning smoothie or my eggs or something like that. Basil is also fun fact about basil. This is kind of tangential, but culinary basil is fantastic at repelling like all insects, all bugs. So on top of being an amazing culinary herb, it's a great natural bug repellent. If you do choose to garden, I use basil all over my garden as a natural insect repellent. Because I'm actually growing a lot of these herbs on my balcony now.
Would you consume it or would you rub it on? How would you use it?
Basil,
Yes.
the great thing about it just existing, just being there. So I have lots of little containers of basil that I put around my garden. Because I'm on a balcony, so it's all container garden.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, so in conclusion, I'll just leave you with really herbalism and natural wellness. Health to me is about these daily small inputs, making consistent choices for your health, and keeping in mind that the question maybe shouldn't be what diet am I following, but what signal am I going to send to my body today?